Breaking today, we have just learned that the Trump legal team is going back and demanding that they re-examine effectively this plan to sentence Donald Trump, to sentence him before going to the White House. So that would have been a criminal sentencing there in New York. A Manhattan judge has indicated he would spare Donald Trump from jail time, but they were still going to somehow try to sentence him in this criminal proceeding because they have alleged that, well, he was moving some money around to pay off one Stormy Daniels. It's a very complicated case. Alvin Bragg originally didn't bring the case because he didn't think he really had a case to bring. I would have agreed with that initial assessment. And then it further complicating things was the fact that the judge wasn't entirely even sure what the charge was. Remember when he said to the jury, Judge Mershon was like, well, pick A, B, or C. It was like a multiple choice question. Just find him guilty of something, right? They wanted to find him guilty of something, and they want to make sure that they're going to have a convicted felon going into office so that they can then run the headlines, convicted felon, now president of the United States. So that's kind of what this is about. It's very, very petty. But in a court filing just unsealed today, the lawyers for Donald Trump have indicated that they have plans now to challenge Justice Mershon's decision to uphold this conviction. So they're preserving a jury's verdict from May. This is according to the New York Times. The judge rejected Mr. Trump's argument that a recent Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity had nullified his conviction for falsifying business records to cover up this Stormy Daniels scandal. So now the lawyers are saying, well, actually, they're going to appeal Justice Mershon's rulings, and they're going to file an action against him and a so-called Article 78 petition. This is fascinating, guys. A special proceeding used to challenge decisions by New York State agencies and judges. So in essence, according to the Times here, and the Times is not exactly a fan of Trump, the president-elect would bring a civil case against the judge to unwind his recent decisions to uphold the conviction and schedule the sentencing. Now, the appellate court could act pretty fast on this. I mean, of course, we're still waiting on the appellate court and Letitia James. More on that in a second. And if so, we could actually see whether or not they would grant or deny an interim stay of the sentencing quite soon. I mean, that could actually happen this week. So we're probably going to be getting some more news on this. But think of the pettiness of it, just if you would, for a moment. I mean, this is a case that many felt shouldn't have been brought. It wasn't clear what the actual charge or what the conviction really was in terms of being guilty, because they were like, oh, go with one of them, any of them. But they settled on somehow this falsification of financial records. And it really was just about getting Donald Trump however they could, whichever way they could. And so now they want to be able to say, well, a convicted felon is going into the Oval Office. And so they believe, these are the radical lefties, that somehow that will damage the MAGA movement, the conservative movement forever. And I'm just going to tell you, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And certainly we've seen that in the case of Republicans, in the case of Donald Trump, in the case of the MAGA movement. So they can try this again, but frankly, somebody would be doing them a favor by saying, forget about this one. It's out, it's done, it's appealed, it's over, he's not being sentenced. Because the more they play up this charade, the worse they look. They look like a bunch of fools, a bunch of morons. I mean, you can't even keep the darn cases straight. This is what I do day in and day out. And I'm like, wait a second. Okay, which one is this? We had the one down at Mar-a-Lago with the documents case. I mean, it's totally fine for Biden to take documents, and he's been taking them for 50 years. Can't do that if you're Donald Trump. Anyway, that one was thrown out. Why? Because it turns out they didn't ever have the authorization to hire one Jack Smith to begin with to even initiate the case. So there was that. There were the other two federal cases that Jack Smith had brought against him related to J6. Those are done. Those are finished. Those are out. He packed up his boxes and he left. And then you had Fani Willis, who, she has her own issues, but she had a crazy case with racketeering, trying to go after Donald Trump on that, because God forbid you actually ask anybody to recount the votes. That's apparently not allowed in the country anymore, not if you're one Donald Trump. On top of that, and this is the one that gets me the most, Letitia James trying to say that she knew how much Mar-a-Lago was worth, and she's putting the estimate somewhere around $18 million, despite the fact that it makes like more than $50 million a year. So Letitia is about to be in for, dare I say, a rude awakening